Hello, everybody. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. And boy, all the stuff that really could be talked about happened very recently, it seems like. The NBA pulling the All-Star game out of Charlotte because of some laws, some of the laws not providing protections for the LGBT community in North Carolina, which is interesting because you have a situation where a similar situation that happened in Georgia. I don't know if you remember the situation where the similar laws were passed in Georgia, and between the NFL threatening to not give Atlanta a Super Bowl because the Falcons are going to be playing in a new building very soon, and Hollywood, which does film a lot of movies in the state of Georgia because of all the tax breaks given to those companies that come into film, which stimulates the economy and so on. They threatened to pull out, and Georgia backtracked on that one awful quickly, which just goes to show money works. Okay, this entertainment thing produces money, and that's why when the entertainment industry decides to take some kind of stand, it typically works out for them in a way that it doesn't work out for you otherwise, because you just tend to be anonymous John Doe on the street. Your anonymity works against you there. You got money, though. You can make things happen, and the NBA is hoping that that's going to happen there. Coach K also came out and denounced the laws in North Carolina as well. So we'll talk about that. Also, I'd like to get into more Big 12 talk. Big 12 media days have come to a close, and there have been some big news stories about that. I talked yesterday a little bit about what expanding the Big 12 could mean for the rest of college football, and specifically for the SEC. But there's another option that I did not talk about yesterday, another thing that could happen to the Big 12 because of the stability, or should I say instability, of the Big 12. There is another thing that could happen here that could affect the SEC, and we'll talk about that right after I tell you about the platforms. Where can you reach us, and where can we reach you? This is not a radio station. This is a social media station, which means we talk to you from here, and you can talk back to us on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. Make sure to check us out on all of those places. Search Hot News Talk Radio in the search bar, or simply go to hotnewstalkradio.com. We've got the links to all of our social media there, conveniently located for you as well. Make sure to check out YouTube for any episodes you might have missed. Archived footage. We never call it old. And, of course, you can check us out on the TuneIn Radio app. That's the TuneIn Radio app. It's absolutely free in your favorite app store. Simply search Hot News Talk Radio. Give us a favorite, press play. You'll have Hot News Talk Radio everywhere you go. Now, to this Big 12 story, because there was something that came up, and I was reading CBS Sports today, and it was something that I had not considered, but really does need to be talked about a little bit more, which is the prospect that the Big 12, which has been unstable for years. The Big 12 has 12 football teams in it, or originally did, right? That's what the 12 stands for. Because of their instability, lost 2 football teams. Texas A&M ended up joining the SEC, and I believe it was who else did they lose? I think they lost. They gained Iowa State. Cannot remember off my head who they lost, but they ended up losing 2 teams. Thusly, the Big 12, ironically, only has 10 teams in it, and thusly are trying and fill the role of those teams. Try and get your number back to 12. Have a big enough conference to where you can have a championship game. All of those things, right? They're trying to do that. and in the process are proving the instability that got them down to 10 teams in the first place, that got Texas A&M taken from them in the first place, which is that the possibility of the Big 12 expanding is just as likely as this possibility. The Big 12 just completely imploding in on itself. That's possible. That conference could fall to pieces quick. I don't care how much TCU wins. I don't care how much Baylor wins. The Big 12 circles around Texas. They have all the money. They have all the power. They have all the influence. And because of that, schools tend to just get fed up with that, especially the schools that have been in the Big 12 for a while. They get a little tired of Texas's act. And I say this as a Texas fan. Texas being the big dog in the conference is the most important thing to them. If Texas wants the Big 12 to expand, they'll expand. And if they don't expand, Texas can threaten to leave the Big 12. And if Texas leaves the Big 12, that whole conference falls apart. And it doesn't matter how good Baylor's been. I mean, apart from what Baylor's gone through recently in losing arguably one of the top 5 best college football coaches because of the rape scandal that happened on their campus, just apart from that, which threatens to weaken the team, obviously, and as it should, once the requisite heads rolled, right? You end up in a situation now for the Big 12 where if you have a situation where Baylor's not going to be very good in the coming future, which we don't know, but it's possible. If they have a bad season this season, I expect them to not recruit anywhere near as well moving forward. So that's going to obviously have an effect. But where you get hurt is if you lose Texas. And if Texas wants to walk, if you're the Pac-12 and you're the SEC, pick up the phone. Can you imagine an SEC with Texas in it? That suddenly changes everything. And I don't even know how that works financially because Texas is used to being the big dog in the conference, and they're not very good right now, so that's not helping. And then in that same conference, if you join the SEC, you join an SEC with Alabama. You join an SEC with Alabama in it. Alabama's already the big dog on campus. Alabama just doesn't go about it as poorly as Texas does. But Texas does this really poorly. Like I have no, it's like being in a family and you can see other families and they've got a different dynamic. Like I'm the oldest brother in my family, but me and my brothers are all cool together. Like I don't have to prove I'm the biggest brother. I don't have to push anybody around. We're all just cool. I don't know. I say stuff and they listen to me sometimes. And usually when I explain what it is that I mean, my brothers will listen to me. I don't feel like I have to push anybody around. And I'll listen to them if they're right. You know, I have friends. You've got the oldest sibling, the oldest brother, and it's not enough for them to be the oldest. Everybody's got to know they're the oldest. I don't know if it's a security thing. If you were just not insecure, that wouldn't be a need for you, possibly. But Texas is like the big brother in the family that's not happy with just being the big brother. They have to let everyone on earth know they're big brother. And they show up in the SEC and they're not big brother anymore, right? Like Alabama's just better than you. LSU is better than you. Like majority of the SEC West is better than you. And I would argue a decent chunk of the SEC East is better than you. So I would be interested in seeing how that would go down. Because it's not going to be as straightforward as we all hope. Texas is something you could poach. You could poach TCU if the Big 12 starts coming apart. I would like to see that as well. That would be really, really interesting. Possibly the most interesting thing that has happened since this kind of restructuring of college football, because we haven't had any of the big teams move conferences. A&M's good. A&M's really good, but they're not the big school of the conference. They were never the big school of the Big 12. They had that rivalry with Texas, which was really great. And if you could get Texas back into the SEC, if you could get them in the SEC, you'd get Texas and Texas A&M back, which would just be, I would be thrilled as a person from Texas. Nothing would make me happier than seeing that again on that level. But when it comes to the Big 12 imploding, the obvious effect that's going to have on the SEC is, can we scoop up some of these teams and make our conference even bigger and even stronger? And then obviously logistically, what does that do for us beyond that? How do you divide SEC East and SEC West? Do you just do the weird thing that the Big Ten did, where you divide the league into leaders? And man, I don't even remember what the other one was called. It was just a weird idea. You couldn't just go north-south. It just was weird. But yeah, if you could bring a big school like that into your conference, it's going to shift some dynamics. It's going to shift some things financially. They're going to enter your recruiting space, I think, a little bit more aggressively now that they consider themselves in your conference. And then, do we end up going through all the drudgery of talking about satellite camps once again? I have no idea. Texas produces a lot of talent, but Texas also reaches into everywhere else. Or at least they try to. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. And I'm talking about the Big 12 possibly falling apart and what that means for the state of Texas, and also like how that fits in to what it is that the SEC is trying to do, because you've already got a competitive league. And one of the things that makes the college football playoff very difficult for the SEC and schools in the SEC, and why we don't have multiple teams represented in the playoff, because let's be honest, the conference kind of cannibalizes itself. You've got a lot of really good teams playing each other very frequently, and what you end up with is a situation whereby you can pick up 2 or 3 losses just because you're playing quality teams regularly. And I don't care what anybody says about how Alabama pads their schedule. Yeah, I know Colin ran that one out there. That's a weak take. It's a weak argument because Alabama plays 4 games consecutively that very, very difficult games. I mean, does Alabama play a softer schedule? Yes, they do. A softer schedule relative to the rest of the conference. But is their schedule soft? I would argue that no, their schedule is in fact not soft. It can't possibly be soft just based on where they play. You can't run that out there like that, because I mean, what you're basically saying is you've got all of these Pac-12 schools and Big Ten schools, and they're not playing any fluff teams. They're not playing anybody weak. Look at them, strive and be like them. And you're looking at the SEC and going like, yeah, I would play a weak non-conference schedule as well if the conference games I had to play were already super difficult, which, by the way, they are. Alabama's schedule, they open up against USC, okay, neutral game in Dallas, right, September 3rd. Then they play Western Kentucky, who isn't as good as them, right, and certainly an FCS school, but make no mistake, Western Kentucky's not a bad team. Western Kentucky's a very good football team. Then they play Ole Miss, who keeps beating them for some reason. Okay, then they play Kent State. Then they play Kentucky. SEC East, not the best, probably going to beat them. Then they play Arkansas. And this is where the stretch of games comes in. They play Arkansas. That's not going to be easy. They play Tennessee in Tennessee. Tennessee could take them out. They play A&M. They've got a bye. And then they play LSU. Then they play Mississippi State. So, I mean, that's a stretch of games that's not going to be easy. None of those games are handwritten, especially when you've got the changes in the offense that they have going on. And then you've got those changes, especially at linebacker. When you lose a guy like Reggie Ragland, like you've got to replace him with somebody. My deal with that is, say you have to add to the schedule now a Texas or a Texas A&M. Like, this becomes even more difficult. Could you see a situation where SEC schools don't make the playoff because of how much more difficult that schedule would become if you picked up those schools? But at the same time, think of the money that you could make. You would have to think of the money, and you'd be crazy, absolutely insane to leave that money on the table, even if the risk is we're going to make our conference difficult, and then as a result, make our schedule more difficult as well. Because, I mean, what you're picking up when you're picking up TCU and picking up Texas and picking up Baylor, like, you're going to be picking up schools that can definitely score a ton of points. And I would be interested in seeing that blend together more nicely, because the SEC has an identity. And I think that would be something else that you would have to think about if you are married to the identity of the SEC as being tough-nosed. We've got a lot of great running backs that have been in this conference. We've got a lot of great defenses that have been in this conference. And then you have to suddenly change that out for you can dilute that by adding 2, maybe even 3 schools that not particularly known for their defense, but definitely have the offensive background and pedigree. Because, I mean, look at how A&M came in. A&M came in, and they had Johnny Football, they had Johnny Manziel, and what they were able to do with the amount of points that they were scoring, they looked like a Big 12 school in the SEC. Like, they didn't conform immediately, and the way that Kevin Sumlin coaches, they probably never will. Kevin Sumlin is brilliant putting together offensive teams. I mean, A&M is going to be the kind of school that scores a lot of points for a very long time. That's just what they are. That's how they're built. But that was how they were built in the Big 12. It's not going to change. So you add more Big 12. Do you dilute your identity some? Does that come into play in any way at all? And I'd be very interested in seeing that and seeing how that shakes out. For me, I'm not exactly married to the concept of the Big 12. I'm not a guy that roots for conferences. I root for my team. So if my conference falls apart, well, then, whatever. And rooting for Texas these past few years, I am of the belief that, hey, they're not going to make the playoffs this year. You have to take Texas and put them in a tougher conference. What does that really hurt? Because they were already not winning the games that they were expected to win, and then losing the games that you did expect them to lose as well. You just piled on top of that. You've got a good coach in Charlie Strong who can't seem to win because he's fixing Mac Brown's old mess. So you've got all of this stuff piling on. Jumping to the SEC, where life is definitely going to be more difficult for them. What does that really hurt for you anyway? It really doesn't hurt anything when you think about it. So the SEC, Tennessee, Alabama, everybody, is this a benefit to you? If the Big 12 falls apart, do you pick up the phone and try and poach some of these teams and make your conference stronger? Try and become a super conference. And in this modern era of championship survival, we're not going to be able to expand the playoff yet. We're going to basically be stuck with this thing for another 6 years or so until the contract runs out with ESPN and the NCAA, where we're going to be stuck with 4 teams. So making the playoff is going to be difficult. You make a super conference. Does that help or hurt you? Does that hurt your identity as a defensive first kind of league? All of these questions I would love to see answered. I'm not saying I'm rooting for the downfall of the Big 12, but a little bit of sports anarchy never hurt anybody, I don't think. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. That's me. Thank you for joining me today, making me just a small part of your day. You know that I appreciate you. The NBA pulling out of North Carolina. Are they right? Talk about it next.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds. We'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. You and I know that real men are prepared for anything. You know what I'm talking about because you're a Take Charge guy. Everyone's talking about Grimm's Tactical, featuring first responder gear, survival gear and equipment, Voodoo Tactical, Leapers. For personal protection, Grimm's Tactical features non-lethal personal protection gear, AR/AK parts, knives, canning and dehydrating equipment. If you hike and camp, Grimm's Tactical has got what you're looking for, bags and packs. And for your side piece, concealed carry holsters for men and women. Plus, Grimm's Tactical carries a wide variety of freeze-dried food. Wise Mountain House, Backpacker's Pantry, Grimm's Tactical, where law enforcement shops, Safari Land, Blackhawk, 511, first responder gear at Grimm's Tactical. Grimm's Tactical, 8115 East Brainerd Road, in the shopping center next to the Walmart Marketplace. Look for the Mighty Mini U-Haul office. Grimm's Tactical is right next door. Grimm's Tactical, 8115 East Brainerd Road. Finding just the right place to live can be a daunting task. Stop your search. In Chattanooga, the place to live is Cross Creek Villas for under $1,000 and available for immediate move-in. You can enjoy this 2-bedroom split layout, over 1,000 square feet, 9-foot ceilings, an extra-large patio or balcony. And don't forget to ask about their preferred employer program. Cross Creek Villas is a gated community, offering a 24-hour fitness facility, a beautiful pool and hot tub, and Cross Creek Villas is pet-friendly. Stroll the pet park with your best friend and enjoy the free use of their business center and clubhouse. Plus, if you mention you heard this on the radio, your application fee is free. Cross Creek Villas, close to downtown off of Highway 58. Go to crosscreekchattanooga.com. That's crosscreekchattanooga.com or call 894-0446. That's 894-0446. Redefine the way you live at Cross Creek Villas. Go to crosscreekchattanooga.com or call 894-0446. Cross Creek Villas.
Any spotty showers and storms will diminish through the nighttime. Muggy overnight, lows 72 to 75. For Friday, the heat wave continues, 97 to 100. That heat index over 100 degrees. An isolated shower storm that will pop up for the weekend. Still hot, highs back into the 90s. Come to Larry's world-famous buffet in Trenton for some of the finest home-style cooking around. Larry also offers catering for parties, big and small. Larry's open Thursdays through Sundays, just off 559 Trenton. And I'm 1412 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Ward. On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds. We'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. The Cascades Motel was robbed on Wednesday. The police gave chase to the suspect who went through the Bachman Tunnel on Ringgold Road, crashed when he reached the end of it, crashing into another vehicle. The driver got out and fled on foot, leaving behind a handgun and money in the wrecked vehicle. Police have multiple leads, but the suspect is still on the loose somewhere in Hamilton County. A cement truck overturned this morning on Bonnie Oaks Drive, causing a massive buildup in traffic. Officials say the driver was trapped inside. He was taken out and taken to the hospital. He's expected to be okay. Drivers were urged to find an alternate route, but that's been cleared up by now. 2 individuals stole $60 in cash from a Walmart in Dalton, but there's no manhunt because the suspect has offered to return the money. He's made arrangements with police officers with the Dalton police. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Make sure you like us on Facebook and check us out streaming live on the TuneIn Radio app on your smartphone. That's TuneIn Radio on your smartphone.
Hot News Talk 1240.
So the NBA is pretty transparent on what they want to happen. They want North Carolina to reverse House Bill 2 law regarding the LGBT community for what they feel is discrimination, and they've been pretty straightforward in what's going to happen. Change the law, or they will pull the 2017 All-Star Game from Charlotte. North Carolina Governor McCrory has basically they adjusted the law. They adjusted the law a little bit, and the NBA didn't feel like it was enough. There were not enough changes in the law. So Adam Silver announced that the league was looking at alternative locations and that Charlotte would be able to be back in on the All-Star Game in 2019, but they would not be in the All-Star Game next year. They would not host it. The official statement from the league says, and I quote, the NBA has decided to relocate the 2017 All-Star Game from Charlotte with the hope of rescheduling for 2019. Since March, when North Carolina enacted House Bill 2 and the issues of legal protections for the LGBT community in Charlotte became prominent, the NBA and the Charlotte Hornets have been working diligently to foster constructive dialogue and to enter positive change. We have been guided in these discussions by the long-standing core values of our league. Those include not only diversity, inclusion, fairness, and respect for others, but also willingness to listen and consider opposing points of view. Our week-long schedule of all-star events and activities is intended to be a global celebration of basketball, our league, and the values for which we stand, and to bring together all members of the NBA community, current and former players, league and team officials, business partners, and fans. While we recognize that the NBA cannot choose the law in every city, state, and country in which we do business, we do not believe we can successfully host our All-Star Game festivities in Charlotte in the climate created by House Bill 2. So there's that. The NBA has made a decision, and I'm going to say that I respect the decision of the league and Adam Silver. Adam Silver's a guy who is an activist. I mean, he is an activist. He grew up with activist parents, people who in their doings and happenings in life have taught him to stand up for people in a weaker situation than him. And as we learned with the entire Donald Sterling situation with the Los Angeles Clippers, Adam Silver does not play around with discrimination. If he perceives it and he perceives he can do something about it, he will. And that's going to lead to some controversial decisions. And I think that this is different than the discussion we had not too long ago about should athletes be politically active, because a lot of people believe that they should be politically active. And I agree. I think athletes should be politically active. However, they also need to be politically aware, and you need to be aware that athletes are human beings too, which means they're going to have opinions that differ from yours. And yeah, there are some positions for which you are going to be on the right side. Positions of equality, I don't think there's any athlete that's going to try and come out on the wrong side of that as an activist. But when you start to get to the more subtle things, when you start to get to the more nuanced things of the law, people are going to start to see things differently from you. And can you handle that? Or do you only want athletes to be politically active when they say the stuff you want them to say? Because that's a different conversation. But this is a league coming out and saying, we don't want to do business here. We don't want our money involved in a place where this law exists. And I think that they have every right to do that. And the state of North Carolina has every right to look at that and go, okay, we can live without the NBA's money. But understand, North Carolina is a basketball state. That's a basketball state. And it'll be interesting to see if the NCAA follows suit in any kind of way. Because basketball can have a similar effect in North Carolina that football can have down here in Tennessee and in Georgia. Because, I mean, we saw it happen in Georgia. And Georgia had that set of controversial laws regarding gay marriage. And the NFL was like, look. Come here. We have a lot of money. We spend a lot of money here. If you don't change those laws, we're not taking away Super Bowl, which is what makes that we're taking away the Super Bowl. And I think that this is what makes that a different move, because the Super Bowl is a much bigger economic draw than the All-Star game. The All-Star game is big. And in a basketball state like North Carolina, it's huge. I mean, the All-Star game would be big, especially for a team like that. A city like Charlotte that had an NBA team, and then the NBA team got moved, and they were finally able to get it back, but the team was the Bobcats. And now they're the Hornets again. It's the team that you had that many people grew up with. They finally have their team back. Now they have an All-Star game. They're eligible to have an All-Star game because they have an NBA team in their city. And the NBA is like, yeah, nah, you change those laws or we leave. Plain and simple. And while that carries a bit of weight to it, nothing convinces people quite like Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is the nuke in this equation. The Super Bowl trumps everything else. It's like you were playing rock, paper, scissors, and the NFL said nuke. Oh, our bad. Our bad. No. We'll change the laws. What do you want them to change to? You can only wear purple on a Thursday? We can do that too. The Georgia would have changed any law for a Super Bowl. Like, I hate to say that because I want to believe cooler heads prevailed. Somebody decided to take a moral stand. No, man, money won the day in Georgia. They want a Super Bowl in Atlanta. They want to host one down there. They absolutely want to. And they absolutely folded. Because the thing is, they're up for a Super Bowl. You build a new stadium. This is how this works in the NFL. You build a new stadium, you are up for a Super Bowl. They did. They're building a new stadium. I don't know how that's going to work out, by the way, because it's going to be the Mercedes. Is it Mercedes Field? Because they already have the Mercedes, the dome in New Orleans is also sponsored by Mercedes. So I don't know, is Mercedes going to sponsor two teams, or are they just going to jump to Atlanta? I have no idea how that works. Because I know in the NBA, you've got Dallas. Dallas has the American Airlines Arena, and the Miami Heat play in the American Airlines Center. So that was an interesting thing to note when they met in the NBA Finals like 6 years ago or whatever it was now, or 5 years ago. And that was interesting to note then, but I don't know. That'll be interesting. Is Mercedes going to sponsor two NFL teams? Either way, the Super Bowl is the nuke. All-Star game's kind of like a bow and arrow. You're playing rock, paper, scissors, and they have a bow and arrow. Like, it's a bigger threat, but it doesn't wipe everything out. Like, it's not going to make people jump to change laws entirely. They might try and tweak the laws and appease you, but the NBA is like, look, this is our stand on the thing. And I think a sports league, especially one as popular as the NBA, I think you do have to take a moral stand, okay? Because you do have the wherewithal to be highly informed. You do have the wherewithal to know what's going on and to learn about what's going on and to understand what's happening in the world and to be able to take an informed position on something if you think that thing is wrong. And again, the same thing applies with athletes as they do leagues or any giant company or corporation that wants to take a stand on an issue. You might not like what stand they take. However, this is the time to mention include things, include people. If you find that the situation that you're involved in is about excluding others and leaving others out, that's how you usually wind up in a history book, pointing at a small child with hatred in your face. That's usually how you wind up there. Okay, when they integrated the schools, we have pictures taken here in the American South. We have pictures of people yelling at small children, spitting at children that didn't necessarily want to go to the integrated schools either, because like it's not like they didn't know they weren't going to be cursed at and yelled at and everything else. They went to the integrated schools. And if your mindset was, let me exclude people, let me leave people out, you are in the history book somewhere yelling at a small child. It's not a good look, okay? You don't have to subscribe to the gay lifestyle. You don't have to believe that what gay people do is biblically correct. You don't have to understand how transgender issues work. You don't have to understand it. But if you find that your natural inclination is to exclude other people from doing stuff, you're going to look bad in a history book. That's how this usually goes down. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to like it. You don't have to appreciate it. But you do have to understand you live in America where you have the right to do, the right to choose. You do. That is a God-given right, your right to choose what you want to do, even if what you're choosing to do may not be the right thing to do. Now you end up in a situation where, you know, you're choosing things that harm others. Well, then now is that's where your problem is, right? You can't choose to just punch people in the face walking down the street. I mean, you can, but then you suffer the consequences of said actions, obviously. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. That's me. Thank you for joining me today, making me just a small part of your day. The Charlotte Hornets also released a statement, and they said, we understand the NBA's decision and the challenges around holding the NBA All-Star Game in Charlotte this season. There was an exhaustive effort from all parties to keep the event in Charlotte, and we are disappointed we are unable to do so. With that said, we are pleased that the NBA opened the door for Charlotte to host All-Star Weekend again as soon as an opportunity was available in 2019. We want to thank the city of Charlotte and the business community for their backing throughout this entire process, starting with the initial bid. We are confident that they will be just as supportive and enthusiastic for the 2019 All-Star Game, which is to say, we are hoping that they see the financial benefit of doing this, the financial benefit of acceptance. Like, is it up to the NBA to decide for a state what their laws should be morally or not, right? That should the NBA be a decider of that? I think, of course, they should be. I don't think there's any reason why they shouldn't be. If the NBA feels like something is morally wrong, they shouldn't be providing money to a place that supports that. And because they have a mechanism to get out of it, that is itself within the law, then, you know, if that's how they want to go about it, then they get to go about it. So I got some NFL news. I got an NFL story here because people have talked about the worst divisions in football over and over and over again. And if you are a Titans fan, it is not lost on you that the AFC South is a division of football that has caught a lot of flack over the years for being not a great division of football. And by not a great division of football, I mean just bad. Just soft. Just bad football happens here. AFC South. The NFC South lately can make a very strong argument for this, by the way. The Saints have been dreadful. The Falcons have been dreadful. And it outside of the Panthers, The Buccaneers have been dreadful. Ugh. There's hope around the corner for all of those teams, I would imagine, but it's not looking great, right? But the AFC South, to me, has looked head and shoulders above the rest of the league, like the worst division in football. You've got the Colts, who don't look great. They've got a lot of holes on that team. Andrew Luck makes up for a whole heck of a lot, but you play the worst teams in football again and again and again. The Titans, you've got Mariota. You look like you're going to turn the corner and improve as a football team. I like the Jags. I like where they're headed. I like what they've got in Allen Hurns and Blake Bortles. I like that connection. I like Jacksonville's offense. I think on defense, they're a very solid team. And the Texans surprised me last year. Played much better football down the stretch than I would have imagined. And they add Brock Osweiler, making them better at the quarterback position, presumably, than they were before. So you end up with the AFC South actually improving as a division of football. The NFC East is the division that was voted the worst division in football. The NFC East, meaning that if you are a fan of the NFC South and you got to watch the Buccaneers, Falcons, and Saints last year, or you're a fan of the AFC South and you watched a lot of the Texans, Colts, Titans last year, and the Jags, your divisions are no longer in the conversation for the worst division in football. The NFC East was selected the worst division in football. And for a very good reason, even though I root for a team in the NFC East, I'm a Redskins fan. For a very good reason. They're just bad. The Eagles and the Giants have new coaches, and also they underachieved greatly last year, especially the Giants. You've got Eli Manning, right? You're supposed to be able to succeed if you've got the franchise quarterback. But the NFC East has been pretty bad as a division of football for a very long time. You haven't had repeat division winners in that conference since the 2003-2004 season when the Eagles did it. I mean, that's a very long time in football years to not have anybody go back-to-back in that division. I mean, nobody at all. I mean, the most inconsistent offenses were in that division. The most inconsistent defenses were in that division. You had injuries to Tony Romo. We don't know if Kirk Cousins is good. We have no idea what the Eagles are doing. Nothing. We've got nothing. Nothing to go on. This isn't really a breakdown of the NFC East, but just to say, if you root for the Saints, Falcons, Titans, Colts, well, those are the teams from the main conferences there that people around here root for. If you root for any of those teams, your conferences are no longer in the discussion for the worst conference or worst divisions in football. The NFC East has got you covered. You're welcome, Chattanooga. Hooray, hooray for awful football. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. It's very, very hard to believe that football is right around the corner. I can't wait. Like, the season cannot come fast enough. NFL and college. And I'm watching stuff about the Big 12. I'm following the Big 12 media days because I root for a Big 12 school. And I'm going, if Texas allows for teams to expand into the Big 12, because Texas allegedly wants Houston to join the Big 12. If the Big 12 expands instead of implodes, because right now we are not sure which direction they're headed in on that one. We have no clue. In fact, they might expand and then implode, like some kind of star, as you learned in physics. They get bigger first before they collapse in on themselves. So we're looking at the Big 12 in a situation like that. If you add Houston or Memphis, right? Houston and Memphis are the two schools you might really, really want to add. Houston, Memphis, BYU. If you add those schools to the Big 12, do you get to be considered a Power 5 conference still? Because most of your teams at that point in your conference, when you also consider how horrible Kansas is at football and how streaky Texas Tech is at football, and they lose a lot of talent now. When you consider all of those things, can you still say that the Big 12 is a Power 5 conference? Or do we now just have 4 power conferences? Because you're just barely there. Like the Big 12 recently already has basically just been a 3-person race between Oklahoma, TCU, and Baylor. And up until last year, we weren't even sure about the Oklahoma part of this equation. Oklahoma, by the way, has to basically play a blameless schedule because they always find a way to lose to Texas in the Red River Shootout. They just do. So they can't lose to anybody else. And then who knows what's going to happen with Baylor now that they don't have Art Briles as their coach and Jim Grobe is taking over the reins. Grobe, from what I understand, very, very good coach, just never had the talent. So we'll see how that goes. He's got Baylor talent now. Let's see what he works. But TCU is the clear and obvious front runner. But outside of Oklahoma, TCU, and Baylor, like nobody else in that conference is good already. They're already not good. You add 2, 3, 4 more teams that aren't good, you're diluting the conference. In the same way that if the Big 12 implodes on itself, and then you're the Pac-12 and you're the SEC and you're trying to poach teams now and pick up the pieces, which you would be incredibly intelligent to do because you pick up Texas, you're making a lot of money. You pick up TCU, I imagine you're making a lot of money. If you're adding those schools, though, to your conference, you're going to make that conference heavier talent-wise. The opposite is true for the Big 12. You're gonna take away from the talent of this conference in a way that some of your conference games are going to feel like non-conference games. And is that something that you want to do? Does that make you better? Or should we remove you from the Power 5 conference conversation? Because I think we should. I think that makes you no longer a Power 5 conference if what we're basically saying is around 15% of the schools in your conference are actually capable of being contending playoff schools. Do you get to be a Power 5? Like if a good chunk of your schools might actually miss bowl season in your whole conference, do you get to be a Power 5 conference? I don't think so. I don't think that's how that works at all. If I had a cup of juice and you poured a little bit of water in it, it's still mostly juice. You've been listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. Clutch with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today. Make sure to listen tomorrow. 6 to 7 is how we do it. Two Millennials Talk coming up next.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Chattanooga Tuesday is an exciting prospect at Shooters Supply and Range in Hickson. Hold your breath and squeeze. Shooters waives the membership fee if you want to shoot any Tuesday. You pay only a $10 range fee, half the price of other gun shops in the area. And another exciting bullseye, on Tuesdays only, enter a drawing. It's for a free $50 gift certificate. Spend the gift card on ammo toward a nifty $380 for your sweetheart, or the concealed carry class maybe, or the use of our electronic firing range. Trigger Tuesday, Shooter Supply and Range in the A-Frame right in your Northgate Mall. 875-4868. Shop us at shooters-range.com. Repairs, transfers, a huge